The first sip tasted off. A little too bitter. A sharp metallic tang lingered on my tongue, sending an immediate warning through my body. I glanced up. Ella was watching me. Her eyes were expectant, a soft smile playing on her lips, the same way she always looked at me in these moments, like she was taking credit for keeping me healthy. I trust you, right? The thought came unbidden, intrusive, but my stomach tightened in response. Ella had been my best friend for over a decade. She was the person I called when I landed my first major deal, the one who had coached me through my worst breakups. We had built our careers side by side, her in the world of wellness and holistic health, me in corporate finance and consulting. Yet, lately, something about her had felt different. Or maybe I had changed. Not bad, I murmured, swirling the smoothie in my glass as if considering the taste. Ella beamed.
I added some maca root and ashwagandha this time. Helps with stress. You've been pushing yourself too hard again, Ava.
There it was, the subtle reprimand disguised as concern. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, well, you know me. What I didn't say was, of course I've been pushing myself. That's how I got where I am. Ella had always preached balance. Work smarter, not harder. Listen to your body. Rest is just as important as productivity. She lived by those words, or at least, that was what she sold to the thousands of followers who worshipped her as a guru of modern wellness. I used to admire that about her. Now, I wasn't so sure. The smoothie sat heavy in my hands, untouched except for that first sip. I kept my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. I had felt off for months. At first, I chalked it up to burnout. The late nights, the high-pressure clients, the constant travel. It made sense, but the symptoms never fully went away. Random bouts of nausea, sudden dizziness in meetings, constant fatigue, despite eating clean and exercising, a vague, lingering brain fog that made it harder to focus. And then, there were the bigger incidents. 2 months ago, I had blacked out in my office after drinking one of Elle's signature teas. I had chalked it up to dehydration, but the ER doctors had found nothing conclusive. A few weeks later, after a smoothie like this one, I had missed a crucial pitch meeting. Elle had been the first to console me, and just last week, when I had dinner at her house, I had spent the entire night throwing up. Elle had been so worried, but also quick to suggest that maybe I had been working too much again. The pattern was too obvious now. Every time I got sick, Elle was there, helping, watching, waiting. I had brushed it off before. But now, sitting in her pristine kitchen, watching her sip her own smoothie without hesitation, I was certain. Something was wrong. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:12 a.m. I had an important client call at 10. Elle knew that. She also knew I had to be sharp for it. Would I be? I reached for my phone, pretending to check an email. My hand trembled slightly. Whether from nerves or anticipation, I wasn't sure. Mind if I use your restroom real quick? I asked casually. Ella nodded toward the hallway. Of course. You know where it is. I stood, making a show of fumbling my phone. As it slipped, I knocked over a napkin holder, sending papers fluttering onto the counter. Oh, crap, I muttered. Elle laughed. You're such a klutz. Here, let me... I reached forward, swapping our glasses as I gathered the napkins. It happened so quickly, so seamlessly, that even I almost missed it. When I straightened, my smoothie now sat in front of Elle, hers in front of me. Perfect. I smiled sheepishly. Guess I need to slow down, huh? Ella chuckla. Sequant la tête. That's what I've been telling you." She reached for her glass and took a sip. I watched her closely. The first sip, she didn't react. The second, her brow furrowed. She licked her lips, frowning slightly. By the third, her fingers tensed around the glass. My heart pounded. I forced myself to stay calm, sipping from my new smoothie, Elle's original drink. "How's it taste?" I asked, my voice light. She hesitated. "Fine, just a little different than usual." "Oh? What do you think it is?" Her eyes flicked to mine. For the first time, she looked uneasy. Then it happened. A slow, creeping tremor in her fingers, a slight twitch in her jaw. She blinked rapidly, setting the glass down. I leaned forward. "Ella?" She swallowed hard. Her skin, normally glowing with health, had gone pale. Something flickered across her face. Confusion. Then panic. Recognition. My stomach twisted as I saw the exact moment she realized. She had switched smoothies. Her own trap had just backfired. Elle's breathing hitched. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the counter, her fingers missing the edge before finally gripping it for support. I stayed perfectly still, watching, waiting. She blinked rapidly, her pupils dilating, her breath coming faster now. Her voice faltered, barely above a whisper. I felt a rush of cold seep into my chest, spreading through my limbs. This was it. The proof I needed. "Elle?" I asked, feigning concern. "You okay?" Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to respond, but she didn't. Instead, she pressed her palm against her stomach. Then, her knees buckled. I caught her just before she collapsed completely, lowering her into one of the bar stools. Her skin had gone ashen, a stark contrast to the healthy glow she always prided herself on. Sweat beaded along her hairline. "What's happening?" she muttered, gripping the edge of the counter like she was trying to anchor herself to something solid. "You tell me." I knelt in front of her, placing a hand on her arm, but my eyes never left her face. "You don't look so good," I said softly. Ella swallowed hard. "Ava, I think something's wrong." Her voice was laced with panic, but also confusion, like her brain hadn't fully caught up with what her body was experiencing. She still didn't know. Not yet. I reached for my phone, hitting the emergency dial. "I'm calling an ambulance." Elle flinched. "Number no, She inhaled sharply, her chest rising and falling too fast. "It's probably just low blood sugar." "Lieutenant." But she didn't want an ambulance. Why? Because she knew something was in that smoothie. I didn't break eye contact as I pressed call. "Yes, I need an ambulance at 42 Willow Lane," I said into the receiver. "A friend of mine is having a severe reaction to something she drank. She's conscious, but experiencing tremors and difficulty breathing." Elle's fingers dug into my wrist. Not hard, but desperate. "Ava," she whispered, "please." I pulled back. "Help is coming," I said, the same words she had told me so many times before. The seconds stretched long, heavy with unspoken words. Ella's hand trembled as she reached for her glass. She stared at it like it was betraying her. Then slowly, her head lifted. Her eyes met mine. And in that moment, I saw it. The realization, the horror. "You..." Her voice was barely audible. "You switched them." My breath was steady. "Yes." Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. I leaned in, keeping my voice even. "What exactly was supposed to happen to me, Elle?" She shook her head weakly, but I saw it. The fear creeping into her expression. I tilted my head. "Come on, just be honest." Elle inhaled shakily, her body visibly fighting whatever was coursing through her system. She finally spoke. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Not really. I stiffened. Not really. My fingers curled into fists, nails digging into my palms. Then what was it supposed to do? She hesitated, her breath coming in uneven bursts. It was just supposed to slow you down, make you rest. Her voice was soft, almost pleading. You work too hard, Ava. My chest constricted, rage simmering just beneath my skin. You've been poisoning me. The words felt foreign in my own mouth. Unreal. Her eyes widened. No, it's not like that. Then tell me what it is like. Ella squeezed her eyes shut, shaking her head like she could will the truth away. Her body trembled violently now. I wasn't going to let you ruin yourself, she whispered. I exhaled sharply. She wasn't denying it. She was justifying it. A slow, eerie calm settled over me. You didn't want me to ruin myself, I repeated, voice measured. Or you didn't want me to surpass you. Her lips parted, but no words came out. That was the answer. The truth snapped into focus, a brutal, unforgiving clarity. Every single time I had fallen ill, Elle had been there. The tea she insisted I try after my big client pitch. The night I ended up vomiting for hours. The special supplement she had added to my drink a week before an investor meeting. I was dizzy for days. The breakfast smoothie the morning of my biggest presentation of the year. I barely made it through the slides. And each time, Elle had been the first to console me. The first to tell me I needed to slow down. The first to suggest maybe I just wasn't cut out for this pace. I had trusted her. I had let my guard down. And she had used that trust to sabotage me. Ella shifted, wincing at the pain in her stomach. Her breathing grew shallower, her fingers twitching involuntarily. I had seen this before. I had felt this before. The paramedics arrived within minutes. I stepped aside as they lifted Elle onto a stretcher, her body limp, her pulse erratic. She was still conscious, but barely. I followed them into the ambulance. Not because I cared if Elle was okay, but because I needed to see this through. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and cold sterility. The beeping of machines filled the space as Ella lay hooked to monitors. I sat just outside her room, phone in hand. The recording was still playing in my head. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. You work too hard. I wasn't going to let you ruin yourself. Bullshit. I saved the recording to my private cloud. Then I forwarded it to my lawyer. Elle was going down for this. A doctor approached, holding a clipboard. Ms. Walker? I stood. Yes. The woman's eyes were sharp, professional. We found high levels of a compound in Ms. Harper's blood work. It's not something that would be in normal food or supplements. I swallowed. Can you check my past medical records? I've been hospitalized 3 times in the last few months with similar symptoms. Her eyes narrowed. We'll run comparisons. Then she paused. There's one more thing, she added. From our preliminary tests, it looks like this wasn't the first time Miss Harper had been exposed to this toxin either. I blinked. What? She nodded. The levels in her system indicate prolonged exposure over time, not just today. A slow chill crept down my spine. Ella had been testing the doses. On herself. The pieces were all there now. Ella hadn't just been poisoning me. She had been testing the dosage. On herself. A calculated, methodical process. Probably starting in smaller doses, just enough to cause minor discomfort, so that when she used it on me, I wouldn't suspect anything unusual. I stared at Elle through the glass window of her hospital room. She looked so small now, a far cry from the confident, polished woman who had once dictated health advice to thousands. She had built an empire on wellness, control, and balance, and yet, the only thing out of control now was her own body. The detective arrived within the hour. Detective Naomi Carter. Mid-40s, sharp brown eyes, a posture that suggested she had seen enough betrayals like this to no longer be surprised. She pulled up a chair across from me in the hospital waiting room, notepad already out. "Ms. Walker, I understand you were present when Ms. Harper fell ill." I nodded. "Yes." Her pen tapped against the paper. "Tell me everything that happened." I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. How Elle had been making me smoothies and teas for months. How I had been experiencing unexplained sickness, always after consuming something from her. How I had suspected something was wrong today, so I had switched our drinks. And when she started reacting, she realized, I finished, voice steady. Detective Carter studied me carefully. Did she say anything incriminating? I pulled out my phone. She did more than that. I hit play on the recording. Elle's voice, weakened, raw, but clear, spilled through the speakers. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you. Not really. I wasn't going to let you ruin yourself. You work too hard, Ava." Detective Carter listened in silence. When it ended, she exhaled, shaking her head. "Well," she said, scribbling something down, "that certainly changes things." Within hours, law enforcement had secured a warrant to search Elle's home and office. What they found confirmed everything. A collection of pharmaceutical compounds in her kitchen cabinet, hidden among her wellness supplements. Handwritten notes detailing dosages and reactions. Texts on her phone. Conversations with an anonymous supplier about acquiring mild sedatives and undetectable stimulants. She had been meticulously tracking everything. One of the officers pulled Detective Carter aside, handing her a printed document. She scanned it, then glanced at me. "We found something else." She passed me the paper. It was an email draft, unsent. I read the first line. "Ava doesn't even realize it's happening. I just need to get the timing right." A chill crawled up my spine. I wasn't just paranoid. I had been a target all along. By that evening, Elle was in police custody. She was barely recovered, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. I stood in the hallway, watching as officers led her away in handcuffs. For a brief second, our eyes met. She didn't look angry. She looked betrayed, as if I was the one who had wronged her, as if I had somehow ruined everything. I stepped forward, voice calm, unwavering. "You did this to yourself, Ella." She didn't respond, didn't even fight back. She just lowered her head as the officers walked her out. And just like that, it was over. The media exploded with the news. Wellness icon Elle Harper, arrested for attempted poisoning. Exposé, the dark side of the wellness industry. Elle Harper's downfall, a story of greed, jealousy, and sabotage. Her business crumbled overnight. Sponsors dropped her. Her followers turned against her. Every brand she had ever worked with publicly distanced themselves. She had spent years building an empire on trust. And now, no one believed a single word she said. 1 year later, I stood on a stage at the Women in Leadership Summit. Hundreds of professionals sat before me, waiting for me to speak. I took a deep breath, gripping the podium. "Success isn't just about working hard," I said. "It's about knowing who to trust." I let that sink in before continuing. The hardest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people we let closest. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I met their gazes, unwavering. But surviving those betrayals? I exhaled. That makes us stronger. A round of applause erupted. As I stepped off stage, my assistant approached, beaming. "Henderson Group just confirmed," she said. "They want to renew the contract for another 3 years." I smiled. I had won. Not by revenge, not by stooping to her level, but by rising above. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and unforgiving. Ella sat across from Detective Carter, hands cuffed to the table. She looked different now, smaller, weaker. Her once perfectly curated image of poise and control had shattered into something raw and exposed. She had been in custody for 48 hours, and the weight of her reality was sinking in. I watched from behind the one-way mirror, my arms crossed tightly over my chest. I wanted to leave. I wanted to walk away and never see her again. But I needed to hear it. I needed to know why. Carter leaned forward, her voice measured, steady. "Elle, let's make this simple. The evidence is overwhelming. You were caught with the substances. You were recorded admitting to Ava that you'd been drugging her. We have messages between you and your supplier. We even found a log tracking her reactions." Elle stared at her hands, her fingers interlocked, trembling. "You're looking at multiple felony charges," Carter continued. "Attempted poisoning, fraud, reckless endangerment, possibly even premeditated assault." Still, Elle said nothing. I exhaled slowly. "Say something." Carter tapped her pen against the table. "Why did you do it?" Silence. Then, Elle lifted her head, her eyes locked onto Carter's with a quiet, eerie calm. "I was protecting her," she said softly. I went rigid. Carter frowned. "Protecting her?" Elle nodded. "Ava was ruining herself. She never knew when to stop. She worked until she burned out. I saw it happening." Carter's expression remained unreadable. "So you decided the best way to help was poisoning her?" Ella exhaled, shaking her head. "I didn't poison her." I let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable." "Then what would you call it?" Carter pressed. Ella's voice turned pleading, like she genuinely wanted Carter to understand. I gave her mild doses, just enough to make her take breaks, just enough to force her to slow down. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted to save her from herself. I felt something burning inside me. Rage, disgust, disbelief. Carter folded her arms. "So your solution was to make her physically ill, sabotage her career, and manipulate her into believing she was overworking herself?" Elle's jaw clenched. She needed to step back. She needed to stop taking everything from me. There it was. The truth, slipping through her carefully constructed justification. Carter pounced. "You didn't do this for her. You did it for yourself." Ella's lips parted, but no words came out. "You were losing your career," Carter continued. "Ava was rising while you were falling. Clients preferred her. Investors trusted her. And instead of finding a way to improve yourself, you tried to bring her down to your level." Elle's shoulders curled inward, her nails digging into her palm. "This wasn't about protecting her," Carter finished. "This was about power." A long, heavy silence filled the room. Elle n'a pas nié. Because she couldn't. Because she knew it was true. Hours later, Carter and I sat across from each other in the precinct office. She tossed a thick folder onto the desk between us. "We dug deeper," she said. "Ella wasn't just losing clients. She was financially sinking." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Carter flipped open the folder, revealing bank statements, emails, legal documents. She lost 2 major sponsorships in the last 6 months, Carter explained. Her brand deals were drying up. She was hemorrhaging money. I stared at the documents. She was desperate. That's why she had escalated. Carter leaned back in her chair. The final straw was the Henderson deal, wasn't it? I swallowed hard. The biggest contract of my career. A corporate consulting opportunity that Elle had pitched for months ago. She had lost it. I had won it. And that's when she decided I had to be stopped. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening against the table's edge. She didn't just want to slow me down, I murmured. She wanted me gone. Carter nodded. Exactly. The trial date was set 6 months later. By then, the media storm had grown unbearable. Elle's carefully curated wellness empire had imploded. Her sponsors cut all ties. Her online followers turned against her. Her brand, once a thriving beacon of balance and success, was now synonymous with deception. She was no longer Elle Harper, the respected wellness mogul. She was Elle Harper, the woman who poisoned her best friend out of jealousy. I sat in the courtroom, back straight, hands folded neatly in my lap. Elle sat at the defense table, looking pale and fragile. She didn't meet my gaze. The prosecution laid out their case flawlessly. The pharmaceutical compounds found in her home, the messages to her supplier, the recorded confession from the hospital, the medical reports linking my symptoms to those substances. The defense tried to argue that Elle's intentions were never to cause serious harm, but intent didn't matter. She had systematically poisoned me, and now she would pay the price. The judge's voice rang through the silent courtroom. The premeditated nature of these actions, the systematic attempt to undermine the victim, demands the maximum sentence. I watched as Elle stood to receive her verdict. Guilty, on all counts. The bailiff moved to escort her out. For the briefest moment, she turned toward me. Her eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite name. Regret, hatred, loss, maybe all of it. And then, she was gone. 1 month later, I stood in my new office overlooking San Francisco. My phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Contract renewal. Confirmation Henderson Group has officially renewed their contract for another 3 years. I stared at the screen, a slow smile pulling at my lips. She had tried to take everything from me. But I had won, not by fighting her, not by seeking revenge, but by refusing to break. And in the end, that was the best revenge of all. The past year had felt like a slow exhale after holding my breath for too long. Ella was gone, not dead, not erased from existence, but gone in every way that mattered. Her wellness empire had crumbled. Her name was synonymous with betrayal. She was serving a prison sentence, stripped of the influence and power she once wielded. And me? I was stronger than ever, not because I had fought her, but because I had refused to let her destroy me. I stood at the Women in Leadership Summit, facing an audience of hundreds. The moment was surreal. A year ago, I had been sitting across from Elle, drinking her poisoned smoothies, second-guessing my own instincts. Now, I was the keynote speaker at one of the biggest business conferences in the country. The irony wasn't lost on me. I took a deep breath and gripped the podium. Success isn't just about working hard, I began, scanning the crowd. It's about knowing who to trust. Silence. They were listening. The hardest betrayals don't come from strangers, I continued. They come from the people we let closest. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A few heads nodded. They understood. But surviving those betrayals, I exhaled. That makes us stronger. I let my words settle. Then I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to break. The room erupted into applause. I had won. Not through hatred, not through bitterness, but by choosing to keep moving forward. That evening, after the conference, I received an email. Subject: L. Harper, prison sentencing update. I hesitated before opening it. Did I really care? Number I deleted it without reading. Elle ne comptait plus. She had spent years trying to take me down. But in the end, she had only destroyed herself. And me? I was just getting started. I walked out of the conference venue, the cool San Francisco air crisp against my skin. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a different email. Subject: Contract renewal confirmation. Henderson Group. They had officially extended their contract for another 3 years. I stared at the screen for a long moment. And then, I smiled. I had won. Not by seeking vengeance, not by fighting dirty, but by rising above. Because in the end, the people who try to tear you down never really had the power to break you. Betrayal often comes from the places we least expect it, from the people we trust, admire, or even love. Ah, 6 teaches a powerful lesson. Not everyone who supports you truly wants to see you succeed. Sometimes, their encouragement is laced with control, their concern masked as sabotage. This story highlights the importance of trusting your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Ava's strength wasn't just in uncovering the truth, but in the way she chose to handle it. She didn't seek revenge through destruction. She won by refusing to break. In life, success isn't just about hard work. It's about recognizing who deserves a seat at your table. Not all relationships are meant to last. And sometimes, walking away from toxic people is the greatest act of self-preservation. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving they never had the power to stop you in the first place. True strength lies in resilience, in knowing that your worth isn't defined by others' insecurities. At the end of the day, the people who try to tear you down will always fall under the weight of their own deception. But you rise, you move forward, and that is how you truly win.